When you're learning English, I think it's natural to translate from your native language to English, but this is something that you should really try to avoid as you move from a beginner to intermediate to an advanced learner. And really, it just comes down to developing positive learning habits. So I want to talk to you about 5 things that I want you to start doing today so that you can stop translating and start thinking in English. The first thing that I want you to do is to create an English bubble. After that, I want you to keep your learning routines in English. And then we're going to change the way that you learn new vocabulary. We're also going to start automating some of your responses, and then we're going to turn thinking into active learning. And I know what you may be thinking right now. I should subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, and then that way I can become your new English teacher. My name is Wes, the channel Interactive English. That's what it's all about. It's all about helping you improve your English skills. So the first thing that I want you to do, and I want you to do this today, and really we'll start doing it, is to create an English bubble. And what I'm talking about is just surrounding yourself with the English language and getting as much exposure as you possibly can. So take a moment right now and think about, well, how much exposure do you normally get to the English language each day? And whatever you come up with, I want you to try to double that and make that bubble even stronger, because when you do this, it's like you're building the foundation. You're creating an atmosphere that's going to allow you to translate less and start thinking more. So this is why many people think, well, I need to go live in an English-speaking country, and that's going to help me learn the language faster, and it's going to be easier as well, because they think, well, I'm going to be surrounded by the language. Thankfully, today, it's not necessary. Because of technology, because of computers, we can surround ourselves with any language, no matter where we are in the world. And I think it's especially easy with English. So in general, what am I talking about? I'm talking about getting more daily practice with the primary language skills. More reading, speaking, listening, writing. To be specific, what are some things that you can do that maybe you're not doing them right now? When you wake up in the morning, instead of waking up to an annoying alarm sound, wake up listening to music in English. Before you go to bed at night, if you're like me, I tend to look at my phone and I may read an article online. You can read an article in English. You're watching YouTube videos. If you turn on those subtitles, turn them on in English. If you're taking a class online, the whole lesson should be in English. And again, you do not have to go to an English-speaking country for this to happen. You can do this no matter where you are in the world. Now let's get back to the lesson to help you stop translating and start thinking in English. And I want to talk to you about a few more things that I want you to do today. And the next thing that I want you to do is to keep your learning routines in English. I understand if you're a beginner that it's normal to learn English using your native language. It maybe builds a little more confidence. It helps you more easily comprehend what you're learning. But as you become intermediate, advanced, and you try to work your way toward fluency, your learning should be entirely in English. Because, well, when you're learning, it's natural for your brain to switch back and forth between English and your native language. The goal is for this to happen less often. And when you keep your learning routines in English, that's the result. So once again, it comes back to developing those positive learning habits. If you're learning grammar rules, then you should learn those rules in English. If you are taking an online class, the entire lesson should be in English. And then there's one thing that I definitely want you to do starting today from now on. When you look up a new word or phrase, new vocabulary, I want you to use an English dictionary. There are many online dictionaries that when you look up the meaning, it uses simple, easy words. They make it very easy for you to understand. I like to use Cambridge. You could also read example sentences so that you can better understand the context in which these words are used. You can also see if there are other words in the word family. How is the word used as an adjective, as a noun? So that's something that I definitely want you to do if you're not doing it already. when you learn new vocabulary, look up the meaning using an English dictionary. Now, speaking of vocabulary, that is an excellent segue into the next thing that I want you to do, which is we are going to change the way you are learning new vocabulary. And again, we're going to keep building those positive learning habits, and I want you to just put away your translator. If you have a translator, just put it away. You do not need it in order to express yourself. I know as a beginner, it's a quick and easy solution, but the goal is not to stay at the level of a beginner. You want to improve. And when you're constantly translating, it's really going to delay your learning. It's not as meaningful, and you're likely to forget. So as I mentioned, I want you to start looking up new words using an English dictionary. And as you learn the meaning of these new words and you feel comfortable that you understand maybe how the word is used, I then want you to make a word association, because that way it becomes more meaningful and you're more likely to remember the meaning as well as put that word up here in your active memory. So when you make a word association, you're taking a word and you are connecting it with a person or thing. It's like you're able to then put a picture in your mind. And there have been many studies about how useful word association is when it comes to language acquisition. And this is really how we acquire our native language. We learn a new word, and then we put that picture in our mind. So if I say blue bear, all right, you can probably put a picture in your mind. Maybe it looks something like this. This is one of my daughter's favorite toys. But I think one of the challenges is with more advanced vocabulary that might be a little more abstract, and there's not just a clear picture that you can think of. But still, in that case, you can associate it perhaps with a person. So if you learn an adjective like frugal, it means somebody who does not like to spend a lot of money. They're very careful with their money. Well, I am frugal. You can think of me. Or if you learn an expression like glass half full, it describes somebody who's very hopeful or optimistic. In the same way that glass half empty describes somebody who's pessimistic. So I could ask you, what kind of person are you? Are you a glass half full type of person or a glass half empty type of person? Let me know down in the comments. And it doesn't always have to be a word association with other people. Recently, I did a lesson talking about earthquakes and some words that you would often hear when talking about this. And one of the adjectives was devastating. And this is actually an adjective that is pretty common when you're talking about any natural disaster. So this is a change that I definitely want you to make. And at any time you learn a new vocabulary word or phrase, make a word association, because it's just going to help you retain that vocabulary, which then means when you're trying to think about something in English, you have all those words at your disposal, and your brain's not going to be switching back and forth as much to your native language. You're going to be able to keep it in English mode, which is what I want you to do. Something I also want you to do is to start automating your responses. And well, think of autotype when you're typing something and then it goes ahead and fills in what you might be trying to write. If you use Gmail, they have something called auto-compose. It helps you write emails faster because they're making suggestions. And you can do the same thing with your speech. And in that case, you're not really translating. You're not even really having to think. Somebody's just saying something to you and you respond immediately without thinking about it, and there is no translation. So how should you do this? I think you should start with common questions that somebody may ask you. If you meet somebody and they say, "What do you do for a living?" You should be able to give a response quickly, easily, naturally, and talk about this because you've done it several times before. So this is a great example of a question somebody could ask you, and then you give that auto response. You could also use partial auto responses. So a question like, "Where are you going?" You could say, "I'm gonna go," and then fill in the rest. And you're using that reduction, I'm gonna go shopping, I'm gonna go to the bakery, I'm gonna go to the park. and then you can fill in the rest with, well, whatever is happening at that moment, wherever you may be going. So this is useful when you're having a conversation and you can just respond immediately. You're not having to translate. You really don't even need to think that much. And you give a quick response. There are no awkward pauses, which is how a conversation should be. Now, I know I said there's not much thinking with these automated responses. So let's talk about thinking right now. And one thing that I want you to do is I want you to turn thinking into active learning. And when I say active learning, it just means that you're required to do something. So in this case, you're required to think. I want you to make yourself think in English. So if you have like 5 or 10 minutes during the day, maybe when you're not doing much, you're brushing your teeth, you're making dinner, you're riding the bus to work, I want you to take some of that time and say, all right, I'm going to make myself think in English. Whatever you see, however you feel, you're going to be thinking about it in English, and see how long you can do that before your brain switches back over to your native language. This is something that I want you to do, and I want you to do it for homework. That's right, I'm going to give you some homework in this lesson. Today, I want you to take 10 minutes and just think in English and tell yourself, okay, for the next 10 minutes, I'm just going to think entirely in English, and I want you to let me know how it goes down in the comments. Were you able to do this for a few minutes or 10 minutes or even longer before your brain switched back to your native language? The longer you can do this, then I think that is an excellent sign. So starting today, I want you to do those 5 things that we talked about in this lesson. You're going to create an English bubble. You're going to keep your learning routines in English. You're going to change the way you learn new vocabulary. You're going to start automating some of those responses. And you're going to turn thinking into active learning. And when you do this, tomorrow, the next week, the next month, the next year, you will be translating less and you'll be thinking more in English, which is the